Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is the regular board meeting of the Lammersville Unified School District Board of Education. Today is May 20th, 2015. Call this meeting to order at 7:01. And this meeting is being recorded. And at this time, would everyone please silence their cell phones and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Matthew Balzerini.
Here.
Colin Clements.
Here.
Sharon Lampel.
Here.
Shane Nielsen.
Here.
David Pombo.
Here.
Tessa Pungchai.
Approval and/or corrections to the agenda?
There are none. I move we approve the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. As many of you know, Mrs. Janice McClintock was the past general manager of the Mountain House Community Services District. Unfortunately, she has passed a couple of weeks ago. So at this time, I'd like to call for a moment of silence in her honor. And at this time, we'll receive public comment if anyone has anything that's not currently on the agenda. Hearing none. Our first item is going to be a presentation by Dr. Nicholas. Item A is employee recognition. You want it all to come down?
All right. Are we all going down? Yep.
So it's my great pleasure tonight to honor 4 staff members in our district. As our district grows, we get to expand the number of awards we give out. And so they're broken up into categories by age and grades at different school sites. So we have 2 recognized employees from CSEA and 2 certificated staff members as well. So it is my pleasure, and we'll call forward tonight for outstanding 7th through 12th grade classified employee of the 2014-15 school year, Gilbert Machado. I'll be accepting that award for him tonight. And he says he very much appreciates it and he appreciates the board's support. A teacher in our district for outstanding 7th through 12th grade certificated employee of the 2014-15 school year, Katrina Bornkamp. Our third recipient is for TK through 6th grade. This is classified employee of the 2014-15 school year, Rose Boynton. And last but not least, a dedicated, true professional for decades in this district. She started when she was 2, and she's retiring. It's my pleasure to present this award, but then our board president's pleasure to present a second certificate or acknowledgement of your service to our children. The outstanding TK 6th grade certificated employee of the 2014-15 school year, and well-deserved for an excellent career for kids, Ann Davis.
And we'd also like to present you with this plaque on behalf of the school district. It says in honor of her years of service in public education, dedication, longevity, and in support of the academic excellence of the students of the Lammersville Unified School District for your service from July 1st, 1982 to June 30th, 2015, presented by the board. Thank you.
So because we had everybody sit back down, we're going to have all the recipients come back up because we're going to do a group photo. Sorry, Ann. So please come forward and stand with our board. Pasa's the tallest, so if you want to look tall, that's the best place to be.
I would just like to say a special thank you to Ann Davis. She's been around Lammersville almost as long as I have. She taught 4 of my 5 children. The only reason she missed the one is she changed from 5th grade to 3rd grade teacher when he was in the 4th grade, so she had the pleasure of skipping that class. But
One less Pablo in her life.
just wanted to say a special thank you. You've been an asset and a real heart to this district for many, many years. Thank you.
Consent items for consideration. There are several. Item A is the approval of governing board meeting minutes from May 6th. Item B is the warrants and budget revisions. And item C are 13 hires for summer school and extended school year. Item D is approval of a new hire. I'm going to pull item E. Item F is an acceptance of retirement of Ann Davis. Congratulations. Item G is one resignation, and item H is an acceptance of a donation. Timothy Bauer is donating his coaching stipend towards new basketball equipment for Lammersville School.
I'll move for approval of the consent items as presented with the exception of item D. E.
Second.
And actually, before we get, sorry, I don't necessarily want to pull it. Can we just have some discussion about it before we actually vote on it, please? I'm sorry. We have a new hire that we would like to acknowledge since she's here in our audience tonight. So if you wouldn't mind, Heather, please rise. This is our new Director of Instruction, Assessment, and Technology Integration, Heather Sherburne.
Welcome.
Would you like to say a few words?
You're mean. Put her on the spot.
No. You want me to talk to Dale about what I did to him?
I just want to say it's my pleasure, my real great pleasure to come and work in Lammersville. I have been very impressed already with your facilities, and the welcoming and the way I was treated before I was hired speaks a lot about the quality of a district, and I was treated very well here. Reading through the LCAP plan and the strategic plan, I can see that there's a lot of great work that's gone on already, and I couldn't be more pleased to be a part of this team. So thank you very much.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now that I screwed that up, can we start over again?
Okay, I will move for approval of all of the consent items as presented.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And I just, if I could personally thank Mr. Bauer, he worked and is donating back the money that he earned for the additional time he spent to the kids that he coached, and I just wanted to thank him for that.
District Administrative Reports. Item A is the Superintendent's Report. Mountain House Mitigation Agreement Review, Exhibit B. We have a guest speaker, I believe.
We do, but before I introduce Susan Goodwin, there was some information that came out that I think is important for the board and the community to hear all at one time about our Casey results. And so I wanted to present to the community and our board, the county score for math, first-time passage rate is 83%, and for English language arts is 79%. The state average is 85% in math and 83% in ELA. The first time we ever took the Casey, first-time passage rate, Mountain House High School, 92% ELA, 89% math. So we've already, our first official posted number outdid the state and outdid the county. So I wanted to let the board know of that exciting news. I also wanted to point out some recognition that came from an untapped source. I understand at the local Lions or Kiwanis meeting this morning, Mountain House High School and the partnership with Delta was discussed. And I quote Dean Dr. Jessie Garza Roderick, that she said that I had parents whose children were only in this 5th, 6th, and 7th grade asking about how to get their child into our Mountain House Early College Academy program. So word about town is there's good things going on at Mountain House High School and at Lammersville Unified School District. So I did want everybody to hear that good news. So with that said, it's my pleasure this evening to introduce Susan Goodwin, who's going to be speaking about a mitigation agreement, Exhibit B, and talk a little bit about facilities and the history of our community.
Thank you, Kirk. Oh, and what did I do with the clicker? Oh, thank you.
Welcome back. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, my pleasure. Yes, I know, the old lady of Mountain House is back, huh? I know I was asked to speak tonight because I've got way too much history to admit to relative to this project, but it is still my favorite project ever in almost 30 years of work in the industry because I really did get to see it from its infancy on. So I was asked to come tonight and just talk a little bit about the history of the mitigation agreements very briefly, and Exhibit B and how we got to where we are today and how things were funded sort of in a nutshell to where we are today. So what I wanted to do was start with, let's see, there we go. To start with sort of a big picture look at the fact that schools was a piece of the pie. It was a very huge pie back then, which would have grown substantially now because the master plan was approved back in the early 90s. And these costs, the total master plan costs at the time, you can see up in the right-hand corner, was $443 million for the public infrastructure to serve this community. And that was in $94. So in today's dollars, it would be somewhere between $700 and $800 million. And of that, schools was approximately 30% of the total. So what my firm was tasked to do back then was to help the public agencies and the developers figure out how everything was going to be funded, and certainly schools was a big part of that. Schools, as you know, and as you've so beautifully implemented, was the heart of Mountain House from the start of the master plan. And so schools actually were reserved, the funding of schools was reserved a special place in that all of the, what we call land secured financing capacity, the Melleroos or anything like Melleroos, all of that was reserved for schools. And part of that was because the schools were the focus of the community and the school costs were considerable. I think it's so great to hear the results. I feel like it's one of my children performing like that. But that's what happens when you put the kind of money into the facilities. And the fact that they were K-8, the fact that they were beautifully designed, and seeing it all on paper and then seeing it today, and every time I come into the community, it really is impressive. But it also is expensive. And what I wanted to show you tonight was even though it was thoroughly analyzed, painfully analyzed at the time, things change over 20 years, and we're seeing the results of that today. So the school mitigation agreements, a lot of this probably is going to repeat what the superintendent has spoken to you about in past meetings, but there are the two separate mitigation agreements. There's one for K-8 schools that was negotiated with Lammersville at the time, which was not a unified district at the time. And then Tracy Joint Unified was the high school provider at the time with whom the developer negotiated. And the working out, and I shouldn't even say negotiated, because the developer was on board for schools to be the center of the community. So there was negotiating, but it was also really working out the details as to how the schools would be provided over time and be there before the students needed them. And it took more than a year for both of these agreements to be worked out, well over a year, and that was with regular weekly, sometimes bi-weekly meetings. And the primary objectives were the districts wanted to make sure, kind of obvious, but the districts wanted to make sure that the schools were funded in a timely manner. That was definitely key, seeing that the only other school you had was built in the 1800s at the time. And so the schools had to be available in a timely manner, and they had to be funded in a timely manner, which is, it's not just the construction, it's the funding, which is usually the harder nut to crack. And then the Lammersville district needed administrative facilities and some vehicles too, or Tracy not so much at the time. The developers, what they were looking for was some surety as to the costs that they needed to work into their pro forma to figure out. They were still trying to figure out at the time, did Mountain House work? Did it pencil for them? With that kind of an infrastructure tab, it was a question they had to look at again and again and again. So they needed to know what schools were going to cost, and then they wanted to make sure that the schools were phased as development was phased. They didn't want too many schools. There were already at that time some nightmare stories out of Tracy where people had moved in expecting a new school to be there and it wasn't. So the developers wanted the schools to be there but not be required earlier than was actually needed. What resulted from this back and forth negotiation was the famous Exhibit B. Both agreements have an Exhibit B, and in both agreements it sets forth the school costs that were expected at the time, an escalator that would apply, because we all knew costs would change, just not quite how much, and then the phasing of the schools relative to the phasing of the student generation. So Exhibit B really is the heart of both agreements, and it's been followed pretty much all along. There is language in there that says certain neighborhoods might start before the phasing that was expected, which has happened, but generally Exhibit B has been monitored throughout the process. Okay, so the original mechanisms that were anticipated for Mountain House schools, and this really hasn't changed to this point, is for K-8 schools, as I mentioned, land secured financing. Here, that means Mello-Roos, which I know can be a dirty word, but that's how these schools got built. And the entire Mello-Roos capacity, all of it, where in a lot of developments that I work in, the Mello-Roos capacity is split: sewer, water, roads, storm, and then some schools. In this case, because of the cost of the schools, the entire capacity was dedicated to schools. Initially, K-8 schools, that was the plan. And then that was going to be combined with state funding, and has been combined with state funding. And then to remedy any interim funding gaps, what's defined in the mitigation agreement as shortfall contributions. And what this means is if we're expecting state funding and it hasn't come in yet, or if we're expecting a new Mello-Roos bond issue but it hasn't happened yet and another school gets triggered, the developer, pursuant to the mitigation agreement, has to put up money that will be reimbursed once those other revenue sources become available. This did happen for Wicklin. For the first school, we had not secured state funding at the time Wicklin was starting construction. The bids needed to be let, and the developer put up some money, and then we sold the entire first Mello-Roos bond issue went to build the Wicklin school. This has also happened, as you know, for the high school. The high school is such a large, lumpy cost that none of the funding mechanisms could keep up with it. So they have put up a reimbursable contribution. For the high school, it was anticipated that it was built into the documents that there was the flexibility to apply the Mello-Roos to high school, but we knew we were going to need it all for the K-8s to begin with. So the flexibility is built in, but we were anticipating that primarily developer impact fees that were paid at the close of escrow on each unit would go to fund the high school, combined with state funding and then shortfall contributions. And that has been the high school funding up until this point. Okay, oh, sorry. So this happens to be one of the plans that actually pretty much went as planned as far as what was anticipated to be used and how the schools were anticipated to be phased. And to date, it has actually been a very successful school funding program. We started with Wickland, like I said, the first Melrose bond issue, which was obviously the Wickland neighborhood. The full capacity went to build that school, and then there was a small funding gap that was paid by the developer until the state funding came in. But then when state funding came in, what was basically qualified for Wickland, that then went to fund Bethany, and we got started on Bethany next. And so 2004 Wickland, 2007 Bethany went in. There was a good chunk of state funding to help, and then we sold another Melrose bond issue when the Bethany neighborhood began developing. After that, and both of those are in the same Melrose district, CFD 2002. After that, we actually jumped. 2002 includes Wickland, Bethany, and Altamont. I know them as neighborhood E, F, and G. And then Cuesta started, actually, before we got to Altamont. And so Cuesta, there was another CFD formed, and that funding, along with some more state funding that came in after Bethany, went to build Cuesta. And then Altamont as well. So the first 4 K-8s funded Melrose, state funding, and the money came in, and those schools were built in a timely manner. Then the high school started, and there was no more Melrose capacity at that point for the high school. There were developer fees that had been collected, but they weren't sufficient. What happens with the high school is because it basically has to serve the whole community, and a lot of the community hasn't been built yet, there was the need for quite a large shortfall funding contribution, and that was made the tune of $52 million, and about $5 million repaid so far, and that will continue to be repaid slowly over time as the community builds out. And then Hanson Elementary, Neighborhood C, as I know it, will be the next in line. That will be the next CFD, a separate one, CFD 2014-1. It's been formed, and there'll be another Melrose bond issue sometime 2 or 3 years out when Hanson gets started. So the implementation has worked. So what has been the challenge to date, or what will be the challenge as we go forward, is that there have been changes in school construction costs, in school construction design, in technology. I mean, in 1994, there was so much that didn't even exist that's now in your new high school, and we couldn't have anticipated it. The costs in Exhibit B were not something that the developer threw out. They were costs that were worked on by the district. They worked with the Office of Public School Construction. They had a full-time school planner that the developer funded on behalf of the district to help develop those costs. There was an architect involved. So those really were based on the best cost estimates at the time, based on school construction at the time. And then the construction cost index that escalated those costs was the index, and is the index, that the Office of Public School Construction uses to adjust costs over time. So it all looked like it should keep up. But that, like I said, was a long time ago. Looking at the costs for, they're labeled alphabetically, the neighborhoods, because at that time we didn't have names, and still don't for a lot of the neighborhoods. But the costs for neighborhood C, which is Hanson, in Exhibit B, I escalated it to $2014 because the 15 index wasn't available yet. And about a little under $16 million was programmed for the Hanson School. The Hanson School is coming in at an estimated $32 million, so it has doubled in cost. And so this is where going forward gets trickier, and we all get more creative. The high school costs, escalating the high school costs in Exhibit B of that mitigation agreement to 2014 would provide $74.5 million, which back in 1994, that we were just, wow, $74.5 million for a high school. Imagine that. Well, here we are, and phases 1 and 2 alone are $93 million. And then the phase 3, which we also desperately want to see happen, would bring the total up to about $120 million. So as things go forward, that will be the trick. There will be more CFDs formed, there will be more bonds sold, There will be bonds refunded. The more developed a neighborhood gets, the more the bond market likes it because there's no more risk, developer risk in a neighborhood. So oftentimes the bonds are refunded and you can get a lower interest rate and get more capacity out of the same special tax rates. Those are the type of things that will continue to help close these gaps. But that, in as small a nutshell as possible, I think is sort of the history to where we are today. Any questions?
I just questioned was it Marshall Swift is even with the inflation, even with the dramatic change, why isn't that keeping up? That's the piece that I still don't understand.
Well, I think there are changes in schools in general that, like I said, in '94, I mean, the technology, when I did the tour of Mountain House High School, I mean, I was getting choked up thinking of how little we knew it would be like that. I mean, the security, the technology, the Chromebooks or whichever device you guys are, I mean, there's just no way we could have anticipated. And they did have the technology budget, which it was laughable now compared to what's in there. But so I think it's not knowing what schools we're going to develop into. And these are the best of schools. I mean, the scores show it. But they're the best of schools architecturally, technologically, I think. So not all schools that the Office of Public School Construction is responsible for or estimates costs for are like this. The K-8 nature is a little bit different. You know, a lot of the schools in the state are still elementary and then middle schools, but we had taken that all into account. So I just think there were things like the cost of steel competing with China and all these things that also could not have been anticipated back then. So.
But I think a reasonable question to ask is then why does the index not account for that? I mean, between concrete, steel, labor costs, the index, I get some of the other pieces, but there's no way that the technology piece of the high school equals $45.5 million.
Yeah.
A lot of that is in the bare bones construction costs of steel, concrete, labor, and all the other factors going into it, and the index is not keeping up with that. That's not your fault. It's not our fault. Why is the state not looking at that index going, wait a minute, it doesn't even keep up with inflation, true? The Marshall Swift index is far below inflation. So I don't understand why the state mandates or OPSC continues to use an index that if anybody did accounting for 5 minutes would recognize, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, again, you may not know the answer to that. It's a question I think maybe for other entities, but that's the frustration I have, and I think we all share, is we're tied to a figure by the state that doesn't even come close to reality.
Yeah, and I'm too cynical at this point in my career to speculate why they do what they do. You know, I mean, the fact that they have to fund half of it might have to do with some of it. But no, I really don't know. But I question, you know, why they do a lot of the things up there.
Me
so.
too.
But it's more now, I think the question is, what can we do? You know, so far, you guys have really worked some miracles. I mean, every time that turnip has a drop of blood in it, we squeeze it again, and these schools have happened. Every one of these schools, Wickland, Bethany, Altamont, Quest, they all came in above costs. And yet those neighborhoods, combined with the state funding, granted, did end up funding those schools. So there are miracles being worked every year out here.
That's the other piece of the conversation, is that by design, these schools took that state match into account, which now that the governor's not going to fund the construction bond, that's really going to make things, I mean, extremely difficult for us to try and finance these facilities. And I just got back from CSBA. I was at CSBA all weekend, and it's not looking good for the state bond.
I did just want to add, though, one other thing just for your presentation and more for the public than anything else. But while you're correct that the Miller response was solely devoted to the schools, it's not like the developer then turned around and said, and we'll just take care of the rest of that. This community pays several special assessments to cover what would have been in those Mellorews. We technically have a second Mellorews, for lack of a better term, to fund those things that the developer didn't put and allowed the schools to keep and to spend that. So it's not like the developer gave us all that money and then said, we'll go ahead and spend the rest of that you guys need to spend on water, sewage, road, parks, and the rest of that. We're paying for that too in special assessments. So
Yeah, in the end, they don't do it for charitable reasons. Yeah, I mean, whether it's paid out of the cost of the homes they sell or the impact fees they pay or anything, the developers end up in the end making a profit, right?
We
So
pay it.
that's
That's
right.
the truth.
So
Does the board have any other questions? Thank you, Susan.
okay,
Appreciate
you're
it.
welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next up, item B is the district maintenance and operations report. Avina Kaiser.
Thank you. There were a few points that I wanted to make today. One of them being the need to upgrade our infrastructure. The switches need to be replaced, and then we will be ordering additional access points in phases based on our needs. We did check with all of the staff, and our goal was to do the one-on-one. Obviously, we have that at the high school, 1-to-1 grades 7 and 8, and then 2-to-1 grades 4 through 6. I did also want to point out that we're having a one-year warranty walkthrough at the high school on May 27th, and then after that, we will be doing Altamont. They're still trying to work out the issues between who is at fault on the carpet at Altamont. And then we also have found that there's some glue coming through some of the other areas on the floor. And they found it by accident when a group of kids all went into the resource area and was stepping on the floor. It started to seep through, and then the custodian realized that it was happening in other places as well. So at least it's been identified, it's been reported, so they will definitely need to take care of that. And then, as you know, we have the water shortage, and DSA is requiring that any future construction projects, that they will need to restrict the irrigation by putting in separate water meters, automatic controllers that adapt to changes in weather and soil moisture. And I know that it's been reported that some of the sprinklers have been running on the weekends, and Valley Crest is responsible for those, and the director of maintenance is going to be working with them to ensure that that doesn't happen. I also wanted to remind the public that we have the reporting of problems they see on our school sites available on the website under the Business Services Facility Reporting. I have not yet received a note through that system. It sends out an email. I've by chance,
Does it have a Facebook link?
I've-
Because if it did, you might get a complaint.
we
If
actually
I have
did.
to click on anything other than Facebook, I can't
That's where I
complain
found
anywhere else.
some of the issues. Now, we did put out a blast a couple of weeks ago that said, hey, if you have a facility concern, report it through this, but I still haven't received anything. So I wanted to obviously send out some kind of flyer through the schools. Manteca Unified School District sent one out about make every drop count, and then including what restrictions that we would have. I'm working with the director of maintenance on trying to make sure the schools are only watering on certain days. And the other one was obviously making sure that we inform the public how to report some of these things that they're saying. Call this number, send an email, or report it on our website.
You left out Facebook. Come on.
And
Can I ask a couple of questions? First is to the switches. Where are we talking about replacing switches?
they need to be replaced at 4 sites because they have not ever been replaced.
So you're talking the Wickland switches, Lammersville
Wickland,
switches, Bethany.
Questa
and
actually has
Questa.
the most switches that need to be replaced. Cisco is going to stop supporting the ones that we have this summer. So the goal is to get those replaced this summer.
And then as to the watering, I brought this up before to someone, but have we looked at the Altamont School? There's an area outside the fences at the park that's basically just rocks and that tall golf course type grass.
This is the first I'm hearing of it.
I know,
so I'll address
I only
it.
talked to someone about it in passing, haven't reported to the official person. So I
Official.
would just, if I could now say, have we looked at
It
that?
didn't
and
work, so
tried-
I tested it because I
Well,
feared maybe it
let's
wasn't
not water
working.
it. I mean, if we don't have to, if we're not gonna get punished by the CSD, don't water it. It's that stupid 2-foot tall grass sitting on top of rocks. If we can avoid watering it.
Which side of Altamont?
I'm gonna say it's on the west side by
West
the
side?
track. There's that whole area that's like a drainage section that's like giant lava rocks and
Okay.
grass, tall fescue.
When you
type
say
grass.
golf course grass, there's the kind you mow, and then there's the wispy kind from
Wispy kind,
Scotland?
You
Okay.
can't even get into the area because it's all fenced off, and I think it was intended for a drainage section to get to the creek. And if we can avoid watering it at all, I don't see why we wouldn't.
Okay, will do. Any more questions?
Thank you. Item C, Special Education Improvement Plan Update. Ms. Corona?
Good evening. Hello?
I hear you. Good.
It is on. Okay. Good evening. So it is that time again that I stand before you and give you an update of the Special Education Improvement Plan. This presentation has shifted a little bit. So okay. So first of all, we're looking at a Special Education Improvement Plan. Stop right there, Kush. Maybe I'll stand over here. Yeah?
So, I need to apologize. We're having some technical difficulties
issues here.
with our overhead, so
Okay.
we're using a temporary.
So last school year, there were some areas identified that, areas of concern that were identified. So there was a Special Education Improvement Plan developed. This school year, that Special Education Improvement Plan was launched. However, we did have a rough start. The Special Education Improvement Plan has a vision. We believe we had skills, the resources. We have an action plan, which would result in a change of the entire special education department. However, because of that, because of that rough start at the beginning of the school year, we did, I apologize. This is not good.
The space bar might just work to pause and unpause.
The what?
Space bar?
Space bar.
That's what, okay. Going back. We had a rough start. The rough start consisted of 2 special education teaching position vacancies, which one was filled mid-October, 1 school psychologist vacancy that was not filled until probably, I want to say November, and we had to contract out. We had 7 intern teachers and 3 teachers that are fully credentialed have between 2 and 3 years of teaching experience. So that was a little rough at the beginning. We still had 1 vacancy that we had a very difficult time to fill, and we still haven't filled it up to this day. So we did have an improvement plan. We have a vision, we have an action plan, but this improvement plan resulted in frustration. So as you can see in this, on my right, we're missing the skills and the resources. We have a vision in mind, we have the action plan, there is some frustration. And like I mentioned before, given that we had 2 vacancies to fill and 7 intern teachers and 3 teachers that had less than 3 years teaching experience. So there was the frustration. So my presentation this evening is going to give you an overview of the goal that we have in mind for next year to fill those blank spots, the skills and the resources. We're taking a new learning path. Special education teachers will be receiving professional development training. They will be receiving the training. They will become knowledgeable in special education. By applying their knowledge, we will be in compliance. And how is this going to impact our goal and our improvement plan? The impact will be, we will be meeting student needs. The learning team is all general education staff and school site administrators. School site administrators and general education staff will also be receiving professional development. They will also become knowledgeable in special education, and by applying that knowledge, we will be following process and procedures district-wide, and which will result in providing high-quality education in the least restrictive environment. That being said, the purpose of this goal to provide professional development is to effectively execute the special education improvement plan. And the target learners will be district-wide staff. So the data tells us that we need to improve special education services and provide high-quality education. We need to close that gap and improve teacher collaboration. By committing to this, we will successfully result in compliance of IEPs, improvement of process and procedures, and we will address the areas of need. Now, the learning format of the professional development that will be offered will be hands-on training, webinars, ongoing support by the program specialist, by the director of special education, by the behavior specialist, as well as County SELPA. I will be bringing their program specialist into our district to provide some training. So the alignment to the district goals will be to successfully execute the special education improvement plan. The student goal is to improve the student services and close that gap. And the vision in mind here is to have all staff work collaboratively, provide strategic support for students to successfully access the general curriculum. So with that being said, we have planned out, mapped out, month by month. We targeted specific topics, especially for special education staff, that they would need training on at the beginning of the school year. In the next few slides, you will see each month, and they have topics of what type of training will be provided. For the month of August, we prioritized depending on, it doesn't matter the level of experience. Teachers do need process and procedures for special education. They need to know about law. In September, we will be providing training on IEP facilitation, data collection, and continuum of services. So these trainings have been mapped out throughout the entire school year for next school year. In October, we have the pre-referral process, RTI. November, how to implement accommodations, modifications, collect data for extended school year. So the first half of the year will be introducing the skills. The second half of the year, January through April, we will be providing refresher courses. And this is specifically for special education staff. So they will be getting training on how to write IEPs, and this will be a review, conducting standardized assessments, implementation of social skills, how to write goals and objectives. Some of these trainings are specifically geared for high school, like our trainings in April. These are specifically geared for high school staff because they have to learn how to write transition plans, and they have to be working with their students, since we are going to have seniors on workability. So that month is going to be targeted specifically for teachers at the high school level. Now, we identified topics that general education staff also need training in. These are some of the topics. This same presentation was presented to all school site administrators during admin forum. So how are we going to do this? We're going to be providing the training at different school sites, whether it's on Focus Friday or we choose different dates. I know we have some professional development dates already aligned for PD. So I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say Debbie and I, Mrs. Wingo and I, choose a pre-referral process. We're going to team up, and as a team, we're going to develop a presentation for that pre-referral process. We're going to come to Bethany, present that presentation. That same presentation will be then taken to other school site administrators. They will present that same presentation on the pre-referral process to their school site. During admin forum, I know that there were some administrators, they've already chosen several of these topics where they're going to be working in teams. Our school psychologist, our program specialist, and behavior specialist will also be part of those teams. So we're presenting the same presentation at all school sites. Why are we doing this? The reason why we want to use one presentation, when we develop one presentation on the pre-referral process, we're going to develop consistency, and there's going to be a process and procedures district-wide. There will not be any room for miscommunication as far as one school got this information, the other school got a different information. We're all going to be using the same PowerPoints for each topic. We're just going to be working in teams, and then from there we're going to disseminate each presentation and go back to the school sites and present that information. So, with that information, we will have the outcome will be let me see. A little slow. We have a vision. We will now have skills, and we will have resources, and our action plan will be effectively implemented, and which will result on a positive change with district-wide and within our special education department. And do you have any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. It sounds as though there's a recruitment and retention issue with staff. Is that something that you're seeing with other districts in the area as well?
Yes. Today I attended the directors meeting at the county, and that was a discussion that we had. Several districts are still recruiting, but they're having a difficult time getting, yet alone just intern teachers. Yeah, that is a.
So did they discuss feedback at that meeting? So what is the obstacle? What's the objection to attracting and retaining the right talent? Did they discuss that at all?
No, there were some discussions I know I mentioned, and Dr. Gill went to a job fair in Fresno that they were giving some bonuses, sign-up bonuses of $5,000. Of course, that in our area, that's not something feasible. But there was no discussion about it. It's just every school district is having trouble recruiting people.
And this is not new.
Yeah, I mean, for people.
Yeah.
People have been on the board. No, I mean, when we had the downturn in the economy and most districts were laying teachers off, which we never had to, I think that people look differently at the profession. And I think now there's a shortage. Is it a shortage of qualified teachers, what it sounds like, qualified special education teachers?
Qualified.
Credentialed at all. Because I don't know any district that does not hire interns. Special education does not attract as many folks as regular ed. It's a high burnout field. People work in it 3 to 5 years and they leave because it is such a stressful job. Sure. And the expectations just get higher and higher by the state standards that we have to meet. And there are more pressures on special education teachers than regular ed teachers. Not that one job is easier than the other. It's just different pressures.
You've got the district saying, move this kid out of special education. You got the parents saying, no, my kid needs more help. And you've got both sides of the argument beating up on you all day long, every day, for years. It gets tiring.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the academic goals are exactly the same for special education as regular education, which those of us that have been in education for a minute know that that's not realistic. So, did you want to say something, Dr. Gill?
Because we deal with that on a daily basis. This is the first year that we are actually, not only us, all of the other districts, because we work with the county office and other organizations literally on a weekly basis. We are having trouble finding music teachers, science teachers, math teachers, foreign education, language, Spanish, those type of, and special education. You wouldn't believe how many interviews after interviews. We're like bending backwards. Anything they ask for, we're trying to give it to them. They still, because there are too many options. They have, I was talking, Dr. Nicholas said it yesterday, said beggars can't be choosers. We are beggars right now. That's where we are. So we bend backwards for them, but they have lots of options and openings as compared to not as many candidates out there.
Right,
So
and-
we this was expected. We kind of knew this is coming, like Mr. Balcherini said. And that we are working with universities and give advertising in other ways and still having difficult time finding people.
There are fewer candidates out there because
Yes.
university programs have gotten smaller. They don't take in as many people. And because the economy is stronger, you have fewer people going into education because it's probably the lowest paid field of professional. So when someone graduates with a credential, they're a hair away from a master's degree. And if you look at the salaries, and this is statewide, this isn't Lammersville.
Correct. Statewide,
okay?
everywhere.
We don't pay teachers what they're worth because we don't have the money to do it.
Yes.
So this is something that all districts are facing. But I do have some questions about special education, if we could get back to that. I'm looking for special ed teachers too for my district.
You can't
and
take
music
ours.
and everything else that you mentioned, Dr. Gill. So how many of the interns that we had this year have completed their teacher education programs and been hired back on as probationary?
So one of the interns has completed. And he will be, he has been offered a position for next school year. Yeah, the others, it is their first year. This year was their first year as an intern.
See, that's another thing. The special education internship, 2 years. General ed, 1 year.
Yes.
So, you know what? If I'm a youngster going into teaching, I'd rather be an intern for 1 year than 2 because,
And make the same money.
well, in some districts, the money is the same. In some districts, you make less as an intern.
We do offer a
Yeah.
$1,000 stipend. It's a lot of paperwork and not just the teaching piece, but there's a lot of collaboration between special ed and general education staff, so.
Yeah. And on the flip side, hiring interns really helps you get a flavor for which teachers fit in your district. Because you could have a fabulous teacher that just does not fit in Lammersville. Their skill set belongs somewhere else. So how many second-year interns are coming back?
One,
Okay.
one.
So we had
Yes.
7 and we're bringing 2 back.
One is coming back. We had 7 interns,
We
and
hired
only one is coming back that it was his second year this year.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So how are we doing with those hires for this year, this coming year?
I still
How are we
have
doing?
the special day class to fill, the K-3 to fill, and 3 RSP positions. We do have the high school, all of those positions have been filled. But the K-8 RSP positions, those are still needing to be filled. Yes.
Same thing all over. So what are we implementing ongoing? Because I've supported special ed interns as a principal myself, so I know what it looks like when you're putting that intern out in the classroom, and you did a great job showing us month by month what professional development you're going to be offering them on top of their going to classes at night, so overload begins in year 1. But what are we doing to help support them to implement the stuff that they're learning at the professional development? Because they hear it, they're very green. And so what are we doing with that ongoing support so we can create some success for these teachers?
So this year, being that it was just the director of special education, and I would go into the meetings of our first year interns. I would model and I would lead that meeting, facilitate that meeting at the beginning. I did maybe 3 for each intern. I did sit one-on-one. For next school year, given that we have identified the need of what the skill set needs, the skill sets that need to be addressed, and we have a program specialist position to fill, so that would be the ongoing, the support.
Okay. Thank you. You have quite a challenge ahead of you. Thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I-
I appreciate you've revamped the whole program, and
Yeah.
you've done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Yeah.
I actually think Trustee Nielsen asked a question under his breath that I actually wanted to ask out loud.
What, if we had 7 and we're keeping 1 or 2, did the other ones go to other districts? Have we investigated that?
So some of those were personnel matter issues, a chunk. And then I think there's greener pastures on a couple of them.
Yes.
I mean, if it was all greener pastures, then it's a conversation that needs to be out here in the future. But if there are other reasons, we can't talk about that.
So, yes, so just to clarification, so the 7, 1 is, next year will be his 3rd year, and then 5 are returning. 5 are returning. So it will be,
Interns will be in year
yes,
2.
5 will be.
Okay, you didn't say that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's much better.
5, just,
That's much better.
5 are returning, yes.
I'm glad we clarified that.
But only 1 became fully credentialed.
How many
only one.
total positions in special ed so they can get every teacher we need, the intern piece, so they can get it? There's 12 or 13 positions, correct?
Right, yes.
Okay,
Vacant or total?
No, total.
Okay.
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 Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you for the helpful background. Thank you for the background.
You're very welcome. You better be careful, I might steal something. I'm kidding. I'm absolutely kidding.
She put that out there, right? All right, next item is committee reports. Item A is facility use. We do have a discussion later in the agenda, but other than that, nothing to add. The meeting's on the agenda, or is listed on the calendar. Item B, District Advisory Committee.
We had our last meeting that you guys were very flexible. That was the night they figured out that we had some glitches in our technology in this room. And we went through the latest version of the LCAP at that point that Dr. Gill and her team had pulled together from all of the input from the various stakeholder groups and from emails and such that she got, and she kept apologizing for going through something that was so boring. But I'll tell you, the audience was riveted. They really were. You were not boring at all, Dr. Gill. It's a fabulous plan. It really is. And now we've seen that there's, some updates from the county, and that's normal. It kind of goes back and forth. And it's a lot of work. And I think everyone should take some time and read that plan. So, and we pretty much said, yes, take this plan to the board. And pizza.
That would be quite a bit of time to read that document.
Yeah. It's how many pages now? 78 pages.
Of riveting reading, by the way.
Of riveting reading. But it doesn't actually take as much time as you would think to read it because the goals grow each year. So there's a lot of repetition because the plan is for 3 years for those of you that have not read it.
It's an incredible page turner. It really is.
I'm trying to option it for a movie right now.
Who done it? Dr. Gill.
Item C, District English Language Advisory Committee.
The DLAC met for the last time for the school year prior to the last school board meeting, and I apologize. We did approve the plan, but I do not know when that will be brought to the board.
So the EL master plan was just submitted to me, so it's going to be reviewed, and then once, we just double checking that it aligns with the LCAP and just quality control it, then we'll bring it forward for a first read with the board, hopefully in the June 3rd meeting. If not, it'll be June 17th.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you. Item D is Gate Arts and Music. Report.
We have not had a gate meeting since our last board meeting. We have an upcoming meeting that the timing of which is to be determined.
Okay. Item E, Safety and Crisis Response. There was a meeting today. Unfortunately, I was not in attendance, but my understanding is that the committee met and are continuing to work on the drill that we're having come up sometime after the start of the school year. And item F is Wellness.
Last week, we had our final Wellness Committee meeting of the year. We discussed the ongoing, at that time, farmers markets, and I understand they were all quite successful. All the kids went home with nice bags filled with fruits and vegetables. We also discussed the relay recess that was a successful event. And I had something else here. What was it? Oh, we also discussed ways to deal with bullying on our campuses, and there's more to come on that at future meetings.
On a governing board reports, Pasa, do you have anything today?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Just wanted to check. Trustee Clemens?
Nothing over and above the committee discussions.
It's been quiet.
I went to a few things in the district since our last board meeting. I went to a VAPA Boosters concert at the high school. It was unfortunately not well attended, but it was a very good concert, Eagles tribute band, very enjoyable. Also attended the DAC meeting that was already mentioned. Went to the Wickland Music concert, and Shane's daughter did a beautiful job singing at that. And also the Lammersville Spring Music and the Lammersville Open House, both were well-attended and enjoyable events.
If I could add something real quick, I did attend the last VAPA bingo of the year, and I just wanted to say that the parents that work on that, the organization, it's just amazing, and they are there every other Friday. The kids call the bingo numbers, and they're so cute. They're having a blast up there, so I highly recommend, even if bingo's not your thing, it's for the visual and performing arts boosters. It's, it's local, they sell not very healthy food, and it's delicious.
So even if you
a Friday night, nachos are great.
even if you don't play bingo, you can come out for dinner.
Yeah, really. So I encourage everyone, that very small group of parents is putting a lot of work into those bingo evenings. So thank you.
May I also add, speaking of VAPA, they're having their the Pops concert next week on Wednesday. So I think you should all attend, support the performing arts department. You'll see that the band, the orchestra, we're all going to play, and it's it's going to be phenomenal.
Flyer and I forgot it.
We're playing James Bond.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pasa. I forgot
Thank
the
you,
flyer.
Pasa, because that brought something up that I had forgotten to mention. On this Saturday, the Mountain House Sports Boosters are having a barbecue competition, and I understand one of my fellow board members is in the competition. So if you want to come out and taste some of Trustee Nielsen's handiwork in the kitchen, come out and support the sports boosters.
The menu will be tri-tip cheesesteaks and barbecue pork ribs with onion rice.
Stop, I haven't eaten dinner yet.
and also jalapeno chicken and homemade chili by Amber Strzok, who's my teammate. So we'll be competing in all 4 categories. We'll be starting at about 6 in the morning if anyone would like to join us.
And I will get there about noon to eat some.
Yeah.
For my governing board report, I kind of mentioned earlier, we had the California School Board Association board meeting on Friday, which ironically there was a lot of discussion about special ed and over-identification, so I felt well educated on the discussion, thank you. And then we had delegate assembly on Saturday and Sunday, a lot of discussion around May revised and the reserve caps. CSBA is working really hard on that, on trying to have that repealed. And as soon as I get the minutes from the information from CSBA, I'll make sure I forward on to all of you. Action items. Item A, consider approval of overnight field trip requests from Mountain House High School. Have a report?
None.
I have one question and one comment. If the registration is $540 a student, but the total estimated cost is $840, is the difference food and transportation, or?
Good evening, Mr. Faubert.
Good evening. Yeah, difference is food, transportation. In fact, The 840 is an estimate with a really large group of students going, and we're finding that only a very small group will go, so it's likely that the cost will go down because we may just be taking a van full of students as opposed to a bus full. The bus is what costs the most.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And then, thank you. And then my comment was the agreement of understanding that was in the packet. I really like that document. And my question is that a standard document for all high school overnighters where they're going to be staying in hotels, especially where the students sign an agreement saying, we understand our obligation?
That sounded like a question.
I believe that agreement was the agreement that the organization provided to us.
I
It's not a
apologize. I think I was
district.
asking on the wrong. It's in the band. It's in the band clinic.
The
one.
band one.
Yeah.
Okay. That one I think was brought with our band director from another district, and it's a good document that basically
I like it
allows us
a
to
lot.
I do too.
help people understand what their personal responsibility is.
And
Yes.
and then later they can't say, well, I didn't understand. I just love that document, and having gone through high school and had overnight, I gotta say, I think that's a great document, and we should implement it for all of them. Sorry about that, Ben. Sorry for the
So
confusion.
then I'm going to move we approve the overnight field trip for, it's both of them, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I move we approve both overnight field trips for Cadet Camp and Band Clinic.
Second.
All in favor?
Wait, comments?
Go ahead.
Because we didn't talk about the second one yet.
Sorry.
I support both of these field trips, but I would like to see proposals come to the board. If we had a concern with, especially the second one, because it's right around the corner, there wouldn't really be enough time deposits have gone in before the board approved. So I would like to see items like this come to the board in a more timely fashion. I know the kids have been raising funds for these trips all year long. So it's just, I'd like to see better timeliness of board approval. And I do want to publicly thank Mr. Rexell for offering to take his personal time to take a group of high school students to Disneyland. It sounds kind of frightening to me, but I give him a lot of credit for doing this. So that's, I'm not standing in the way of the trip. I just would like to see things in a different order coming to the board. So that's it.
And I concur on that as well.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, consider approval of updated 2014-15 fundraisers for Mountain House High School. Any staff report?
None.
No. Board discussion?
Move to approve the updated 2014-15 fundraisers for Mountain House High School.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C is consider approval to adjourn from regular session to open public hearing on collective bargaining proposals.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We are now in public hearing. Is there anything to add? Item D, consider approval to close the public hearing and return to regular session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item E is consider approval to sunshine the initial collective bargaining proposals for the 2015-16 school year. First is for LTA and first is the 2015-16 Lammersville Teacher Association proposal to LUSD, and number 2 is the 2015-16 LUSD initial proposal to LTA. Staff report?
None.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to explain to anyone who doesn't know what a sunshine is. It's the legal start of negotiations. Why it's called sunshine, I have no idea. But it's just, the board have to, okay, I would love that, because I've been doing this for 12 years and I have no idea. But the board has to take action to accept the proposals before the parties can start negotiating. And that would be a little, it's boring? It's really boring. Okay. So
called
that's
that
all.
because it's always been called that.
Yeah. Because we've always done it that way.
I do actually have a question, and you may have already responded to me, but I didn't have a chance to check my emails. Do we strategically do the LTA and the CSCA at different times, or was there a reason why they're not
No,
both being
our intention
sunshine?
was to put all of them on, both on. There was a question about what we agreed to with CSEA, and we're working out those things, but we missed the window of time to get it on the agenda, so you'll be seeing it at the next agenda.
Okay, all right.
With that, can I get a motion?
Well, I move we approve sunshining the initial collective bargaining proposals for LTA.
I'll
Second.
You got it, Colin.
Thank you.
Colin got second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item F is consider approval of the 2015-16 intra-district transfer request. Staff report?
None.
Discussion?
I move we approve the 2015-16 intra-district transfers as submitted.
I only have one comment. The
Hold that thought.
the use of the red to highlight some things in the proposal makes it really hard to read. The black type against the red highlight does not.
It's a little tough.
Different color? Or lighter red? Okay. So we have a first now.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Information discussion items. Item A is the LCAP first reading.
So I'm proud to be able to present the work of a large number of people over a long period of time that includes the entire community of Mountain House and Lammersville to lead to what we're calling the LCAP version 2.0. I do want to thank my team, in particular Dr. Gill and Ms. Kaiser, for taking the recommendations and or direction from the county. I had a robust conversation with a number of them in terms of timing and veracity and legitimacy of direction versus the concerns that they were sharing. It seems that the LCAP is being consumed by lawsuits in some counties. And so everybody's kind of moving from this is a local control document where you explain what you're doing for kids. You identify the measurables of how you're going to say whether or not what you chose worked or didn't work, and how you chose to spend the money to support those things, which I think is a great thing for all education. And now it's really kind of getting caught up in what always happens in California. So the document is longer. I want to thank Alvina for figuring out all the extra 20 pages of boxes. We appreciate those boxes. Our goal is going to be from now on into the future that it's a palatable document at 58 pages to 78. There's a oxymoronic statement there, but it should be understandable. People should kind of be able to figure out what it means. I'm not criticizing the county's direction. I'm simply saying the state is building a plane while flying it too. And a number of members of my team spent last week scrambling to make sure they met those parameters while also holding pure to what we were doing. So any questions, we're happy to field them on the LCAP. A lot of good work and a lot of great support from our stakeholders.
I do have a couple of questions, but I also want to acknowledge the team for, yes, they're flying the plane while they're building it, but we've had the template all year, and then the county, at the direction of the state, sends in something to the district at the very last minute that made them all scramble this week because we didn't even have it at the DAC meeting. So I wanted to thank the team because that's just, you can be politically correct. I can say that's ridiculous. So, so I thought I was off the hook. Being on the district advisory committee, I had read through it, I had seen everything, and then you had changes. So I had a couple of small issues. In one place, and I can go through and find it for you, it says high quality instruction is maintained by 100% of appropriate credentials. And I would beg to differ that high quality instruction has nothing to do with highly qualified teachers. It does in some cases, but not all. So I don't think that's an appropriate measure. Highly qualified teachers meets all of the No Child Left Behind stuff and all of the regulations, but it doesn't mean there's high-quality instruction. So I'd like to see some other measurement in addition added to that little section. Maybe it has to do with teacher evaluation, something that we already have, not to go invent something brand new. I'm not the county. I'm not going to do that to you, okay? And the attendance goal of 98%. Are we setting ourselves up for failure? I've never seen a district with 98% attendance.
Yeah.
I mean,
We're over
I know
90
we're showing to
We're over
it's
97
growth.
now, so.
Yeah.
Huh?
Close.
Okay, but we have 98 in the third year out. Okay, I just, I hope it's achievable. I
One-
saw that number and I was like, oh, there's no way.
If we ever had to explain that,
Yeah.
they're asking for us to incrementally move it up.
Yeah.
If it proves out to be unworthy, then we can always change
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
The review.
I read that one and I just sat there and laughed.
Well,
so.
if you're at 97.4 now, it would be hard to justify a goal of 96,
I know, yeah,
right? As a strategic goal.
yeah. No, I get it, I get it. I
It's not
just,
like the state
yeah.
is reasonable when it comes to measurables, you know, the whole goal
Really?
of 100% of students will be highly
Yeah, at this
Yes,
level.
at this level.
Yeah.
My concern with the figure would be, we're at 97.4 right now, but I would venture to guess that some of the highest absentee rates might occur in the grades we don't currently have in the district. So I would
Senior
worry.
skip?
No. So I do think that is something we might want to look at next year and recognize
That's a
and
good
be
point.
prepared to respond and say,
That
hey,
actually is a really good
we
point.
wanted to have a good goal. We recognize that the state wants us to progress, but our school district had such a change, and therefore we might need to rechange that in the near future. So
I don't think we need to change it now, though.
no.
So,
I found some errors in the LCAP, and I know Dr. Gill is aware of these errors, but they're still in the version that we got in our packet. And on page 28, it has a student suspension rate of 24%, and I know that's incorrect. And then that number is carried on page 29, 32, and 35 of the document. So just pointing out that known error is still in this version of the document.
And for the record, the number is 5%. So yeah, that was just, that's already been corrected, but that had already gone out. But thank you for letting me have that chance to correct that.
And I want to acknowledge everyone that worked on it. I much appreciate it, and also especially the board members. Having the committees was something new. I appreciate you guys taking the time, going to the meetings, and being involved with the process, and especially reporting out, because it helps for those that can't make all the meetings.
how exciting to do this at work and then come home and do it here.
But you're bringing so much more here.
Bringing expertise to the conversation.
And I think board participation in these committees is an important part of being a board member.
I agree.
It gets us
Absolutely.
into
Absolutely.
the workings of things and gives us a new perspective.
I also wanted to say thank you to board members and staff that were integral in putting this together. I know you spent a lot of time on it. I didn't have the benefit of working on it as you put it together over time. So, and to be honest, I didn't read the LCAP word for word last year before I was on the board. And I thought it was a great document and well crafted.
Anything further? Item B is actually an item that I had asked for, the high school track. Last meeting, we brought forward some changes based on our last committee meeting, and this topic, the committee could not decide on a change. We were all over the place. It was controversial discussion, and because of that, I just made the determination as a chair that we're going to bring it to the entire board for discussion. We need some decisions made, and I can tell you now that my position on the issue has changed. And I know Shane and I had great conversation. I can't wait to hear more of it tonight. So, and I think all of you will, I think all of you will love to hear it as well. So we asked the principal and the director, athletic director, to be here tonight to help with the conversation that we were having during the committee meeting, because I think it's very important. And like I said, I'm looking at this differently now. And actually, we had other committee members that I think have made a complete 180 on the issue also. This surrounds the public use of the high school track during off hours. Currently, the policy that we have established in our facility handbook is we are allowing access to the track 30 minutes after school until sunset, Monday through Friday, and on Saturday, during the hours that the custodians on campus, the track would be opened. We made that decision and then realized that the rules of the track we hadn't articulated to the community, so we suspended that activity pending getting signage to articulate all of this. And in waiting for that, we've had more discussion, we've had more research. I believe I forwarded to the entire board a PowerPoint that I received from the high school regarding the maintenance of the track. And they come out and pretty much all but say that outside use is not recommended for the track. It's not recommended to extend the life of the track. When this last came before the board, it was a 4-1 vote, which for this board is rare. So I think more conversation needs to happen. And Mr. Favre, if you would start off, if you don't mind, just kind of the discussion where we started, and we can, unless you have anything to add. No.
I think that fairly sums up what's happened in the committee. So, yeah.
I think from the school's point of view, a lot of the issues that and the explanation that we've given about use of the track have really centered around, number one, the funding mechanism that we have as a public school district is different than that of a Parks and Rec district, and therefore we are funded for the use of the track for students and not for general public use. I think the second important thing that we need to remember is that during the school year, our field is often used, and I know that the rule that is currently written and being, it's been, the use hasn't been, there's been no public use at this time. But, opening up the track, for example, during a soccer practice or a football practice opens us up not only for liability reasons, but also, we spend so much time making sure that we fingerprint and TB tests and all this, our coaches and things, and then we're opening it up to our community, and we don't know who's going to be on the track, so that was another issue. And then the newest thing that came up is, I know the discussion in the Facilities Use Committee where it was decided, no, we are not going to allow use of, we're not going to split the facility. If you rent the track, you have the stadium.
The field.
Or the field,
Right.
Yeah. And that we're not going to split it. And then here we are, we've got a rule that goes contrary to a decision that the Facilities Use Committee is saying, okay, we're one way in this, but then if we want a few people on the track to be going around the track, then it's okay. I think, my biggest concern is the usability of the track for the students. That stadium was built for the high school's use, and it is being heavily used, and in the coming months when we have juniors and seniors, and when we have a full class of seniors the following year, we will have, likely 3 football teams and 3 soccer teams during one season, and then we will have, 3 soccer teams in another season and a track team, and it will be highly used anyway, and to be able to continue using our track and have it be good. I mean, I think it's 8 to 10 years it's supposed to last. If we start allowing more and more use from our community, regardless of whether we put a sign up on the fence or not, the concern is that the track will wear out very soon. A lot of people who do allow use of their track, they say, please run on the outside lanes. Well, who's going to read the sign when they walk in? Supervision is an issue, definitely on the weekends with our custodian who is there. They have responsibilities in the building. They can come open the gate, and then who's watching? I know that we have some documentation about how much it costs to repair even a small little piece. I think we have some paperwork that has a case study where it was open for public use, and somebody brought a saw out onto the track and created a gash in the track, and it cost $12,000 to fix a section about this big. And so it's expensive to repair. We don't, you know, we have, with the gates closed, we have had to chase people off with kids with their bikes. This is with the gates closed. People throw bikes over the fence and climb over their fence with their kids. You know, we've had people with cleats and different kinds of shoes that they shouldn't be having on the track. So there's been a lot of issues, even with the gates closed, with making sure that the track is being used appropriately. And the worry is opening it up to the public. We're not sure exactly how we can appropriately supervise the track while it's open to the public. And, you know, I know liability is a huge issue for me too. There have been lawsuits that have been filed in more than one district where a community member has been hit by a ball or, you know, heaven forbid, like a discus or something like that, I don't know. But opening the district up to the liability like that may not be wise for us, and there might be other things that we want to think about before we open up the track for public use.
Well, and I mean, as a reminder for the board, this has been an ongoing discussion. This is the result of the school district being the only show in town for facility use for the community, to the point where we've had to create a committee to try and manage and create policy around the various different types of use and different types of organizations. And specifically the high school track, we had a significant amount of people that I know had reached out to me, and I'm sure other board members that wanted to use that facility because of the type of track and because we had initially planned Altamont to have that kind of track, and because of a river, we don't have it. But I also wanted to mention and publicly state my appreciation for the high school staff working with us, working with the committee and outside organizations to facilitate using that track. There's an organization that's going to do a track and field meet or prep for a meet, and they wanted to use the facility, and they juggled schedules around and went out of their way to help out that organization. So I appreciate your attendance at the committee meeting, and I really appreciate you guys doing that, making that happen for them. So with that, discussion from the board.
Can I ask a clarifying question just to make sure? We are not talking about, we are talking about having the track and the stadium open to just the general public and whether we're going to do that. We are not discussing whether we're going to rent the facility, you know, allow organizations to use the facility. That's a completely separate question.
Correct. The organizations can
apply
and
right.
and it just based on availability and of course scrutiny by the staff on what they're going to use it for and make sure that they uphold all the rules. But yes, this discussion is purely around public using the track to run on after school and on Saturdays.
And I like I'm sure most of us had a significant number of people, you know, speak to me. Well, actually, not a significant number of people, right? I mean, there's a lot of people in our district. It's not like 1,000 of them came and spoke to me.
That's correct.
Like 20, you know, like a significant number of my acquaintances came and spoke to me, and I think I was pretty clear about this in a previous board meeting that I wanted to give it a try, but that if it became an onerous obligation to district staff, or it became clear that people weren't taking care of our facilities, or, you know, basically if it didn't look like it was the right answer from a fiduciary obligation to protect the district, its people and its assets, that I would go the other way. And I think I've heard enough from district staff and high school personnel, and I get it. I don't think I know after all that I've heard, I've waffled to the other side and said, no, it's really not the right answer for this district to have it just open to the general public.
I went back and forth a couple times just during the last committee meeting. So, but I'm of the same position as you. I don't think that it's even worth getting into trying to manage it. It's not worth the cost.
I think we can say that we tried it.
But we can't. I mean, let's be fair. I don't mean to interrupt you, but we can't. no members of the public have been allowed to use the track. We haven't tried it. We opened it and closed it on the same day. The people who've been using it have been jumping the fence. There has been no open public use of the track. And that's my biggest concern here is we haven't tried it. We've closed it for legitimate reasons that I totally understand, but we always talked about having an opportunity to trust the public with the services that we've agreed to provide. I want to add a couple of things, and I appreciate both Ms. Woods and Mr. Forbear's position on this, but first, I think the liability issue is a complete non sequitur. We allow public to go to the football games. They're no more supervised than the coaches are at the stadium. They're no more in close contact if you're running on the track than you are if you're walking to the stadium back and forth. And if we're going to talk about liability, there have been more lawsuits filed against the football program for injuries the players suffer, but we're not talking about shutting down the football program. I get that liability is an issue, and I also get that the value of the track is an issue. But I would say that if someone's going to take a saw to a track, they're going to do it whether you let them in or you don't. And I think we should give our public an opportunity to help us be stewards of this track and field by saying, if you are there, help us take care of it. And if you can't, then you don't get to. I think if we give the people of this community the education of what that track needs to be used for and how it needs to be used, provide them an ample opportunity or at least a fair opportunity to use it and show that they can help us keep track of it, find a way to supervise it that I think that would be reasonable and fair. I think it's a reasonable, fair opportunity that the community deserves. And I totally would say we haven't given them an opportunity. And that's the part that frustrates me is we're telling the public, yeah, we wanted to, but we don't trust you. We can't trust you. That's what we're telling them if we don't even give them the opportunity. And that's not you, that's what we'd be telling them as a board. That's what I feel, I should say. I feel we would be telling them as a board. And I think the fairest thing to do, both under our obligation as stewards for this school and stewards for this community, is to try to give our public an opportunity to use those fields. I want to also point out that the school's talked about closing both the baseball and softball fields. So if we close the track, the baseball field, and the softball field, there will be almost no outside use of any fields at the high school whatsoever. I don't know how they get access to the soccer grass between the baseball and softball fields. If we close off everything, the high school would be completely unusable by the public.
That was done.
Well, the baseball and softball fields I get, but I believe the gates that were installed will prevent even use of the soccer area in the middle.
Right, no access.
So at this point, if we also close the football field and the track, the entire exterior of the high school is closed off to public use. And I don't believe that was part of what we talked about and promised to do to the community when it comes to public use of our facilities. And that's just this one person's opinion.
Can I add? I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Nielsen, speaking on behalf of the student body, because the high school, I think you all recognize that it's sort of the jewel of the community. Like, everyone unites around it, and the track is, it's really important because we all like to run on it. It's like one of the highlights of our PE. It feels nice to run on, and I think we should give the public a chance to sort of understand that we all have to take care of the track and the facilities, because this is our high school. This is Mountain House High School.
Yeah. So I have not heard anything to change my opinion since the last time that we addressed this, because I was the one dissenting vote. I think comparing the public at a football game with the TB and fingerprinting is comparing apples and oranges. You go to the movies, it's the same thing. There's a lot of people around. So I'm sorry, I just don't get that comparison. Wait, let me finish, please. I think we have given the public somewhat of a chance, and they're already breaking the rules by throwing bikes and stuff over the fence and climbing the fence. So this is telling me that they're not going to follow rules. If we set up rules, they're not followed. Is that going to continue? I don't know. But I have not heard anything to change my opinion of the liability, especially for our students. There's one thing about someone from the public getting hurt, and there's another piece about our students being put at risk, and I'm very concerned about that. And I have not heard anything to change my mind.
I have a clarifying question, and it's not necessarily germane to what we're discussing, but it does have to do with the track. I understand we got signs. Are the signs up?
No.
They're not up.
We haven't finished the signs because we're still trying to figure out what the language is going to be. We brought it back again to the committee. Actually, the discussion was around trying to clarify what we wanted the language to be because there was still some misunderstanding about when it could be used. And part of it had to do with the high school needing the track after school. We started looking at hours, and there wasn't going to be much availability during the week at all anyway, just because there was so much going on. So the conversation started off with, do we allow people to run around the track while other sports are going on? We heard from the high school staff, and the committee decided that that wasn't an option, that they weren't going to be able to use it during for that very reason we talked about with Altamont. You got the track, you got the field, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And then it went, so that was how the conversation started. So no, we do not have signs, they're not up yet.
Well, something that Principal Faubert brought up just struck me, and that is people accessing the track with the gates closed. And whether this board decides to allow access or not, I think we need to have signage up that lets people know that entering the track or the stadium when the gates are closed is against the law, and they will be prosecuted for trespass and all those things, to let people know whether there's access to the track when sporting events or whatever is not going on.
Sure.
But just
there is signage that we did that is posted at the high school. I saw it, and that talks about just the rules of the track, what's allowed, I guess pretty much what's not allowed. No dogs, no bikes, no skateboards, gum, right, all those things. And we are currently working, the committee is discussing and working on that sign that you're talking about. We just are working with the sheriff's department to figure out what section of the penal code or if there's a different code to use so they can take enforcement action, right? But that is currently being worked on by the committee, or now it's with staff. I just had a couple other comments just kind of based on some of the feedback from the rest of the board. As far as the liability is concerned, I agree with Sharon. I think there's two different parts of the discussion. As far as something happening to someone while they're running around the track and the same conversation, we're going to get sued no matter what. Everyone sees his deep pockets, they're going to file suit. So to me, that's a non-issue. The other piece, though, is the safety piece. And I do think that we have a responsibility, especially now that we have such a new stringent policy on fingerprinting at the schools. I agreed with the conversation from Mr. Faubert that if again, we're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouth. If we're going to have such a stringent policy on all of our campuses, why aren't we doing it for the athletic program at the track and the stadium? So that's kind of my position on that. And the trusting of the public, as what was said, I don't feel like based on the conversation, I just feel like the risk is so much more than the reward. The risk of damaging that track and having to pay a significant amount of money outweighs the reward of the community being happy with being able to use that track for a couple hours a week. And that was the other piece of kind of what convinced me was they're not going to have that much time to use it anyway. So. Any other discussion?
Well, I think if there's a group in the public that wants to use it, they can go through the facilities use when we do decide to open it up for that. And they can pay to use the track. Our fees are not exorbitant.
They are for the track. I mean, $85 an hour or something like that, just to rent the track in the field, correct?
Get people to contribute money. I mean, there are ways that if there's a group that really wants to use it, they can use it.
Well, $85 an hour is exorbitant for one person.
And that's the point.
If there's 40 people out there running, $2 an hour.
But and like I said, that's not really the purpose of it. That's not really the point of it. If there's a club, they have an opportunity to rent it. The issue here is about an individual's use. And I'll use me for an example. I live 5 minutes away. I would love nothing better than on a Friday night after work, if there's no football game going on, to run down there to the track. On a Saturday morning, to not have to run on the pavement and mess up my knees and hips more, to be able to run on that track. And there are many members of this community, as I said, granted, it's not 1,000, but about 20 or so members of the community who reached out to us and said they would love to do that too. That means they'd each have to pay $5 to be able to run for an hour. That's, to me, just not a reasonable thing. I get the safety question. I would question, again, if there's football practice going on, I'm not going to be allowed to go in and watch my son if he's at the practice. I haven't been TB'd or fingerprinted if I'm just a normal parent. But we're going to prevent any access, and I know the coaches would love it, but I don't think that's the current policy. That's my issue with that point.
Can we clarify that real quick while we're on it? Do we have a policy on it yet? Or is that anything that's been discussed, or are they going to?
You're not on the field or the track, you're in the stands watching, right?
And so the distance between the outside part of the track and the stands is exactly 5 feet. And that's my point. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about, I think, I just think.
Interaction with the students.
But you're not interacting with the students if you're running, and that's my whole point, is I'm not interacting with the students, I'm running. And if you see someone at the field who's interacting with the students who's not supposed to be, my guess is the coach is going to stop someone. Now, I will also point this out. Matt is exactly correct. The entire committee said, no, if it's being used by the school, we shouldn't allow it. We're not allowing 2 individual entities to rent the track and the field at Altamont. We shouldn't allow public use during the school time. But if the school is not using it, why aren't we going to try to allow the public to use it? And I would say, if we're going to close the field because kids are hopping the fence with the bikes, then we should go ahead and close Wickland because people let their dogs on it. That's a violation of the rules.
Not what we were voting on last time. Last time, we
No, the
voted on
committee.
letting the public use the track while the kids were practicing other stuff on the
committee,
field.
And the committee said, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
But now we're talking about not letting the public use it at all, even if the school's not using it at the time. And to me, I don't think that that's in the spirit of what we're supposed to be doing in this community with regards to our agreement with the community to allow use of our facilities.
I'm sensitive. Thank you for correcting me on my comment that we've given it a try, because let's face it, I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I'm not a jogger. I've never actually tried to go use the track on off hours myself. Not ever gonna. But I was under the understanding that we were trying. I mean, that's what we had discussed. And it occurs to me that I don't really understand if we're saying, okay, we're going to let the public use it, then, and people are throwing their kids' bikes over. Well, that's not, I mean, I can see it at 1 o'clock in the morning, people, probably shouldn't be using the facilities. But if they're throwing their kids' bikes over, it's not at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's kind of probably during the times that I thought we were trying to let people in. So my question is, all right, if we were saying that we were going to let people, individual members of the public use it, and it was locked, and they knew that we were letting people use it, and it was locked, and they throw a bike over, and then they jump over themselves and they break a leg, then there isn't a sign on there saying if it's locked, don't come in, it's trespass and all that. I
don't need a sign to tell me the gate is locked, do not enter.
I realize they have signs on hairdryers now saying don't use
Don't
near
put it in
the
the water.
shower, right? So why? Because I don't need to be told that. So I haven't reversed my position. I'm sensitive to what Shane is saying. I'm
sorry, your previous position or your position tonight?
Yeah, tonight. I'm
sorry.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. My original position this evening.
Okay.
But I am sensitive to what Shane is saying. And, I'm sitting here like, okay, it sounds to me like we didn't actually, is what Shane's saying true? Like we didn't actually implement?
No, the same night we did it back-to-back action items. We created a policy, but then we suspended it pending the signage.
We wanted to wait for the sign.
And we don't have the signs yet, because the question came back from staff about the signage saying there was some confusion about language and what it should be, so we brought it back to the committee, and that's kind of where this whole thing came up, was should we even be allowing any access? And we started talking about hours, and during the week, there's just not gonna be. It's
During the school week.
during the school week, Monday through Friday. There will not be any time for the public to use the track because of
Oh, yeah.
activities with the school.
Well, we're about to hit summer season,
But
right?
even so, we started looking at the schedule, they're gonna be out there until dark. Because of football starts right after, and that goes until dark. So,
And one thing that I would bring up is the parents who are throwing their kids' bicycles over because the gate is locked are the same people who are gonna ride a bicycle right past the sign that says no bicycles into the track and ride their bicycle, skateboard, whatever it is, on the track.
I don't.
that part, we already have signage saying no bicycles. That's already posted.
That's right, but to my mind, that's the same thing as the people that are gonna use a hairdryer near the tub are gonna do it whether
Yeah,
there's a
but
frickin'.
the point is, we have reports of people actually doing the bikes over the fence, and I haven't heard any of people using hairdryers in the shower. Not to say that there aren't, I'm sure there are. I just haven't heard reports of it.
I would like to, Mr. Faubert looks like he's jumping
I
out
do.
of his skin.
I
I'd
just
like
have
to
a
hear what he
couple.
has to say.
I just have a couple things to add to the conversation, and I'm not up here to just keep refuting anything. I just want to something for you to think about. One thing is the difference between elementary school fields on weekends and things like that and high school facilities, because I know that was brought up. And I want you to think about the fact that when we get to the high school, they're competitive teams. And to have competitive teams, you have to have facilities that meet certain standards. And when you have facilities that have to meet certain standards, we have to keep them up to those standards on an ongoing basis. And the more that those facilities are used, the more they're going to have to be kept up. So that's number one. I think a second thing, and I urge you to kind of think about this, the stadium and the track and all of our facilities on the high school campus, because they are used in a competitive way, are all high school facilities. We would never think about, on the weekends when the basketball gym is not being used, opening the doors and saying, the gym is open for anybody to use. Because, it's windy outside and it's hard to shoot a ball. And, I'd rather be inside a nice gym that's sitting there. We don't do that with our elementary schools. We rent them out to groups who are organized, and then we are able to supervise them.
And give us a deposit.
And they're responsible for damage. So think of the stadium as a room, a facility that is owned by the district and managed by the Board of Trustees, ultimately. If you think of it as, we would never open the gym. We would never open the weight room. We would never open a classroom that's not being used. We would never open the multi-use room. Why would we then take a facility that we have spent literally millions of dollars and invested millions of dollars on, and then all of a sudden say, except this one, free reign, everybody come on in. So we need to really think about our facilities. Now, an elementary school playing field is not used for competitive anything. It's used for rec league
You've seen
things.
a Little League game lately?
Huh? Have I seen what?
I'm sorry, I'm just kidding.
They're used for recreational purposes by rec leagues, but elementary schools don't have competitive leagues that they belong to, that they pay money to belong to, that they then invest, that you as board members invest hundreds of thousands of dollars now on extracurricular sports activities, and that we expect to be up to snuff when we step on the track for our track meet or we step onto the field for our football game. And so I urge you to really think about you as stewards of the facility that we have. Pretend that it's a building. We wouldn't open the doors to a building just because it's not being used. We make sure that when we open the doors to our building, it is supervised, there are appropriate personnel there, people have been trained and made to be responsible if something happens. And, you know, we've never been against sharing our facilities we don't have a joint use agreement. We have kind of a gentleman's agreement that will share our facilities, which we do, and we readily will do that. And we do that. So I don't believe that you as a board have ever been in the business of just opening our facilities for incidental use by 1 or 2 or even 20 people at any given time, during the day, night, evening, whatever. So I urge you to take a look at the facility in that light.
Thank you very much for those comments. And actually, as I sat there and listened to you, I decided to change my. No, I'm just kidding. Your look was priceless, Matt. It occurs to me that I'm pretty much destined to look at a group of people and disappoint them. And I went around the community for months asking for the privilege of doing that, of being in this position. And I got to say that I would much rather look at 20 people that I'm friends with and say, I understand that I'm disappointing you, but I have to make a decision that I have to make, than look at the football team or the track team and apologize to them because I made a decision and the track was deteriorated because because we as an organization, this is the royal we, everybody, could not find a way to allow the public to use the facility and have it retained for the track team and the football team. And so when faced with a choice of who I'm going to disappoint, my choice is really clear.
And I'll just add one thing. I find the likening of the severe degradation of the facilities to be highly unlikely over the use issue. Abuse, I won't disagree that someone might be there on cleats. Of course, I sat there during the soccer game and watched the team who rented the facility let their soccer players run back and forth on the track as I kept running up to them and saying, please get your cleats off my track. So that abuse could still occur regardless. We're not talking about a large volume of people. However, I completely agree with you. If we come to find out that this does present a problem, we should address it. But I think we're saying we don't even want the minute option of a problem. We're not going to trust anyone to do it, so we're not going to do it. And if I'm the only one to go in a 4-1 vote, I've been there before. I got no problems with it. I don't take it personally. I completely support Ben's position, and he's doing his job as the administrator of that facility, and so is Ms. Woods, to take care of those facilities. I just feel that as a board member, I have both the hat of the board member who has to recognize we have a shared use obligation with the community for our facilities, and that we should try to look to honor that the best way we can. It's not a joint use, but a shared use obligation. And I do think that we should try to, this is actually one of those conversations we need to be having at our joint board meeting with regards to additional facilities or additional funds we could be getting from the CSD for the use of these facilities. My argument would be, we've opened this track up to the public. You should help us out with some of the maintenance costs, because after all, it's not something you offer to the public. And that would be an opportunity for us to defray some of these additional costs that we might be facing.
They've had an opportunity in the past.
But again, the whole point is we get to have a conversation in front of everybody.
They can't even afford to give us proper medical protection or fire protection. You think they're going to pay for something else?
Let's not go there tonight.
I'm not going there tonight. So like I said, the good part about this is only discussion. We get to have, and again, I fully understand everybody's position. I totally understand that we disagree on it, and I'm cool with that. But I do think that we should at least afford the public an opportunity to help us be stewards of the outdoor facility.
And I want to hear your position.
I would just like to say that as much as I would like to allow public use of the track, I know there are a lot of people out there who like to run. I only run if I'm being chased. But as much
I don't
as
even run then.
as much as I would like to allow that, and as much as I can see Trustee Nielsen's point that we should allow it until there's a problem, I don't want there to be a problem. I don't want to have to fix the track when somebody abuses it or misuses it, or just from use. And therefore, I think we have to err on the side of protecting the assets of the district for our students.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the discussion. I feel comfortable now working with staff and bringing the information back as an action item for our next meeting. And also, I just also wanted to mention that still at the committee level, that is an option for us. The high school staff has said that they'd be willing to discuss providing opportunities for the community to come use the track during, dedicated times when there's supervision. So that's something that we can continue to work on, depending either way, whichever decision goes.
I'd like to make one last clarifying comment, that I think Shane kind of misinterpreted what I was saying. Instead of opening the facilities until it's shown to be a problem and that we have to close it, I'm saying, well, I think we need to close the facilities until we have a plan that we know that we believe will protect, unless and until until I see something that I can look at and say, I think this will work, I have to vote the other way.
And I'd like to say something. I think you both made some excellent points. Colin, you, with your comment about if I have to disappoint someone, my choice is clear who I have to disappoint, because I'm on a school board for a reason. If the community could come up with a way to raise some funds, because this cannot come from the school district, for supervision, that might be something else for us to consider. But I don't think we can just open it up.
I'm willing to entertain possibilities. It's just I don't see a path.
Can't come from the school
right
district.
now. Sure.
And it would have to be supervised. And there's nothing out there right now that we would be able to consider. But if there was something, we could listen and consider something like that.
The high school staff is they're thinking outside the box. And they're so it's something that we could definitely work towards.
Of course they are. They're educators.
Yes.
And I would just like to point out that the majority of this board has gone on both sides of this issue on several occasions.
Yeah. Yes. I think that we've all done our due diligence, and when you have a committee member who has been the loudest voice in this issue, I watched him do a complete 180 also.
Absolutely.
Yes. That to me speaks volumes, that everyone's really passionate, but everyone's really putting on their thinking cap and trying to do what's right for the district. So thank you very much for the discussion. Anything further?
And I just want to say I'm proud of the fact that this board listens to issues, we contemplate them, we sometimes change our mind on the issues, but we try to do a thorough vetting of the issue before we make a decision.
We'll see what happens when it comes back as an action item. Okay, all that's left is the calendar. Please take note that Wednesday, June 3rd is our next regular board meeting.
Could we add to that the student achievement piece?
Yes, please.
That's not there.
That's because I have committed a faux pas.
Changing it again.
So
May I clarify something, Mr. President?
Please do.
We, on June 3rd, Wednesday, 6 o'clock at Mountain House High School will be the district-wide student recognition event to acknowledge all of the students who have done wonderful things academically and through our academic and some athletic endeavors.
And that will be held at a different location, correct?
It'll be at Mountain House High School, multi-use room.
It's in the multi-use room.
No, the main gym, because I had that right.
And then we come here for the board meeting at 7.
Correct. The board meeting will be here at 7, the recognition at 6 in the gym.
For the whole district, right?
We're going to get that done in an hour?
We have a streamlined approach to this.
Okay.
And no, what we learned last year was every kid gets called up once, and if you win 27 medals, you get them all at one time. So we learned last year.
Okay.
And you're hiring an auctioneer to do the announcements?
Yes.
And I guess I'll also note item B is the last day of instruction is June 5th. Okay, so we'll be adjourning to closed session. We have a few items. Item A is public employee discipline dismissal release complaint. Item B, public employee appointment, employment evaluation superintendent. Item C is conference with labor negotiators for employee organizations, LTA, CSEA, and unrepresented groups. And item D, conference with real property negotiators for pretty much all of our facilities.
Move to adjourn to closed session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
I oppose. I want to